Legacy Sabbath School. This is April 22, 2017, and our guest today is Petre Cimpoeru. This is part 2 of a presentation in a series, I should say, on Adventism Behind the Iron Curtain, Romania, part 2. The first part was on the life of Peter and his wife Lydia. We did not hear all that we could hear about that, but we heard some. This week it's about the thought of Peter. So we're talking about the life and thought of Peter. Okay, so that's what we're focusing on this time. We won't hear everything he has to say, but we will hear a lot, and then we'll have some questions and comments. I think the background here is worth noting, and that is many of us have heard Peter over the years make comments about this and that seem to be coming from a particular political and economic point of view. And we want to understand that in its wholeness today, and we want to be able to see how that relates to some of the more practical conclusions to which he comes. So this should be fun, getting the big picture to supplement the little pictures we've had so far. Let's begin with prayer. Dear God, thank you again for this Sabbath school that continues Roy Branson's legacy. Thank you for Peter, who's been here from the very start, along with his wife Lydia. We are mindful that they have come from far away and have seen many things that many of us haven't, and experienced many things that we haven't, and these shape their views. We want to hear about that today. In Christ's name, amen. So, Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
Jesus said, "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar, and unto God the things that are God." God, I should say. And so I wonder how that fits with your overall political and economic philosophy.
Well, first we have to look at the gospel and to give the context when Jesus uttered these words. We know that the Jews came to him and challenged him with a question if it's lawful to pay tribute to the Caesar. And Jesus answered with these words, "Give Caesar what is Caesar." He asked for a denarius, and then he said, "Give Jesus what is God, what is God, and Caesar what is Caesar." Well, we know that they want to trap him with this question. I thought you don't want to trap me today with this question.
I have no desire to trap you. I want to learn from you. No, this is not a trick question. And if you don't like the question, ask a different one and answer it. Okay.
No, this is a fine question, and it's very important for our Christian life, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a very complex question, and it requires some complex answer also. From Jesus' words, for our Christian experience and life, we can deduct a few things. That basically as Christians we are living with two responsibilities. Responsibility to God and responsibility to the government or to the leader, the secular leader in the country we are living. Or we can say also that we are living in two different kingdoms, God's kingdom and the secular kingdom. And every of these kingdoms, they have their rules and regulations. And God's kingdoms require us, as Jesus said, to love our God with all our power, with all our might, with all our soul. And also we can learn something from the Apostle Paul, that he is giving us counsel that we should be submitted to the authorities, because they are ordained by God, and they are ordained to do good, and to reward those that are doing good, and punish those that are doing evil. Of course, sometimes these two kingdoms are coming in conflict with each other. sometimes our responsibility to God is coming in conflict with the responsibility that we have to our governments. From my own experience, I mentioned a little bit this, that I faced this in Romania. And I talked a little bit about my the physical punishments that I took every Monday because I didn't go to school. Then I was challenged by the fourth commandment to keep it or not to keep it. And of course, because I didn't go to school, I had physical punishment every Monday from the communist teacher. But something even more than that happened that I didn't mention in the first presentation, that it was also a moral torture, I can say. My teacher was instructing my colleagues, the students in my class, to isolate me completely, not to interact with me in any way. And not only that, but to challenge me to get into fights almost every day. One day, one of the students hit me with a stone on my head. And the blood was running on my face, and I went to complain to the teacher for this. When he saw me, he said, "Well, what is going on with you? Are you getting crazy? You started hitting your head on the walls?" And he just dismissed me. Well, that was the climate in which basically I survived for the 4 years. And then, of course, I was challenged by the first and third commandments, to keep it or not to keep it. And of course, I was asked to deny God's existence and to say something in the region about God, which I refused to do. And I lost my job. I lost my job twice, and when I lost my job twice, the government refused to give me any kind of work. Well, when we are faced to take decisions like that, of course, it's very difficult. And I understood that it will be very difficult. I have a mother over 80 years old that I have to take care. I have a wife and I have a daughter. And I have responsibilities, and I knew very well what that means if I will take this position. Well, this is what Dietrich Bonhoeffer is saying so beautifully when he is talking about the reward or the cost of discipleship.
Cost of discipleship?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we as Christians will be faced maybe one day or another. And for this we have to be prepared now to be able to take these difficult decisions when the time will come to take a decision, to stand for God, or just to take the easy position to deny God and just to make our life comfortable.
If I can press that just a little bit, as I've listened to you over the years, it seems to me that you have some caution about centralized government. And I have noticed that you and Professor Ted Lefterov share very similar views on that subject, but another colleague of ours, Professor Zach Plantak, doesn't. And I wonder if it's because he's from the former Yugoslavia, that is Professor Plantak, and that you are from Romania, and I think Professor Lefterov is from Bulgaria. And I wonder if the government was more, this is a question, not a comment.
Okay.
Would it be true to say that the government in Romania and Bulgaria was more severe than the government in Yugoslavia, and that therefore that makes you a little more suspicious of the government than Dr. Plantak is? Yes or no?
Yes, Zach was raised up in Yugoslavia, and Josip Broz Tito was a more liberal, I would say, communist. He adopted some forms of capitalist economy giving responsibilities to the workers in the factories, and it was different type of communist, I would say. He also let the Yugoslavians to go abroad and to work in the Western Europe and to earn good money. Then they came back and took care of their families. Then I understand that he has a more lenient position, though I don't understand that he is completely against a centralized control of the state on the economy and, of course, on the lives of the citizens.
Now we're talking about who? Professor Plantek?
Yes, I'm talking about him. In Romania, the situation, and in Bulgaria, the situation, and in Albania, also the situation was different. And the Stalinism in these countries was very strong. And the state really want to control our lives. We are continuously brainwashed by the government, I mean the media, radio, television, school, army, whatever opportunity the government has to brainwash it, using that intensely. And you could see every day, every hour, during day or night, the portrait of the beloved leader and how great deeds he was doing for the people. And but the situation in the country was terrible. He promised the people that if we are going to sacrifice 3-4 generations, then we are going to live in the workers' paradise. Well, that didn't happen. Actually, these generations were sacrificed, but the improvement of the life was very far from happening. And you could see, if you're coming and understand very well the situation in which these people in the communist countries were living, if you're coming from the West and you cross the border in one of these countries, from the border you realize that this is not a free country. I mean, it was barbed wire everywhere. There were machine guns that they were having installed all over. And you could see on the faces of the people the sadness and discouragement of these people because of the situation in which they were living. And after 40 years of living in plus the terror in which the people were living, because this was a government that was not installed with the will of the people. It was installed by the Red Army, by Communist Russia, that wanted to extend this sphere of influence in Eastern Europe and to create kind of buffer zone between Germany and Russia, that twice Germany invaded Russia through this zone. Then this is why I don't believe, and I am strongly against this kind of statist control on the life of the people. Well, now, from the video that you put, with the 14 minutes that you put between what is good from the communism, what is good from socialism, what is good from capitalism, I agree that, first of all, we are not living in a pure capitalistic society here. It's a capitalism, but with some forms of socialist endeavors. Welfare, Medicare, and a few other things, these are not capitalistic forms of...
Social Security.
Yes, Social Security. These are not pure capitalistic. But we have to recognize that in capitalism took early measures to correct these things because the system is not perfect. Socialism is not perfect, communism is not perfect. But they were taken measures since in Germany, let's say an example, that was the first country that introduced some socialistic measures to alleviate the situation of the German workers. By 1880s, Bismarck introduced this in Germany, and then it spread through Western Europe and also eventually came here to the United States. But again, democracy is not a perfect form of government, and it has some problems. And I will use Winston Churchill's words. He was a master phraser. How he described democracy, and I totally agree with him. He said democracy is the worst form of government that I know, but there is not another one better that I know.
Okay, now may I interrupt?
Sure.
Were you going? I don't want to stop
It's
your
okay,
thought.
it's
Okay.
okay.
I would like to go back to the comments you made that you were taught, and others were taught, that if 3 or 4 generations were sacrificed, on the other side of that very terrible time, there would be paradise.
Yes.
Some time ago, I read a book by Peter Berger, and it was called Pyramids of Sacrifice. And I would like to see what you think about what it argued. Peter Berger said, actually, the socialist and the capitalist, and by socialist, he meant the extreme ones, and by capitalist, he meant the extreme ones. He said they're both calling for the sacrifice of a generation, or two, that the socialist, like you indicated, said, well, okay, we're going to suffer some losses and some hardship, but on the other side of that, it will be okay. But he said the capitalists say that too, that, okay, if we have a free market, true, there will be lots of people who will suffer, but in the long run, it will be better for both of us. So the pyramids, plural, Peter Berger thought, of sacrifice were quite similar on both sides of the Iron Curtain. What do you think?
Well, partially, I agree with him that also in capitalism, when the capitalist society started, there were some sacrifices. And I'm thinking that the agricultural revolution that started in England, that stimulated the accumulation of capital, and then stimulated the development of industry, the Industrial Revolution, and other revolutions that happened in the West. Of course, there were some people sacrificed. The land was taken over in England, taken as a classical example, taking the land from them, and they were creating these big farms in which they were able to obtain better results, better crops than they would if they would have small lots and everybody was planting his lot. Then partially I agree with him. But then if that was a sacrifice in the beginning, the situation improved. And I would say that no society in the history of the world created the prosperity, the degree of prosperity that capitalism was creating. No other society in the history of mankind created that. Again, capitalism is perfect? No, only God's kingdom is going to be perfect. But between capitalism with a few improvements that needs, and we already are improving, and are taking some measures in this direction, and socialism with some little bits of capitalistic traces, I cannot between these two, for the sake of me, to accept socialism. And also we can look at the prosperity that capitalism is creating. During the Cold War, there was it was an arms race, but it also an economic competition between two different systems, economical systems. And look how they performed. And let me take you 2 or 3 examples. Let's look at North Korea. At the end of World War II, Korea was divided between occupied half by the American troops and half by the Russian troops. In the North Korea, the Russians broke communist system. In the West, in the south part of Korea, the Americans brought capitalistic society. And look at the 2 Koreas today. South Korea is one of the booming economies in the world, among the most prosperous, and in North Korea, people are starving. They don't have enough food. They are starving. Another example, in East Germany, at the end of World War II, Germany was divided between the Western powers and Russia. Berlin was also divided between the four powers. And throughout the centuries, the 50 years of communism, you could look at, if you visited Eastern Germany, how was the situation there, how the people were living, and how the people were living in West Germany that became one of the greatest economic powers in Europe after they recovered very fast after destruction of the war, and became #1 economy in Europe. And we also can add China in more recent times. The Chinese, after they killed millions of people during Mao Zedong, especially during the Cultural Revolution, after the death of Mao, they adopted a capitalistic system of economy. They adopted a market economy. And look at the prosperity and the boom of China. It's competing now with the United States economically for the first place in the world. Then, looking at just these few examples that we have before our eyes, with people from the same country, with the same customs, with the same education, and how they perform under communism and how they perform under capitalism. And of course, China is a little different because they hold on power politically, but economically they adopted a market-oriented economy. And they are extremely prosperous.
So in this country, it is said that the top 1% of wealthy people have a disproportionate amount of the resources as compared to the rather 99%. And I wonder how that fits with your political and economic philosophy, particularly as a Christian. I'm interested in how your Christian convictions inform all of this.
Of course, you are alluding to economic inequality. Well, first of all, let me say that it was not economic equality in socialism or communism either. Because they said, they promised the people that everybody will be equal, and no privileges, everybody will have equal opportunities, no discrimination. Well, in reality, the situation was not like that. They destroyed aristocracy, which was based on blood, but they created a new aristocracy, which was based on the appartenance of the Communist Party. Because the communists, they have many privileges. We couldn't say that they were equal with the rest of the population. They have special shops in which they were importing for them even things from the West. Ordinary people didn't have access to that. You were put in jail if you get one of these things that came from the West. They have even their law. The laws apply differently to a member of the Communist Party. They were much tolerant toward them, and of course they were better paid, they were having better position, they were advancing in society much more easier, and occupying the best position in the country, in the government and everywhere else in the country. That was not equality that they were promising the people. And it's understandable, and we can understand that when somebody is telling us these utopian things that it's possible to create a society in which all people are going to be equal. This is an utopia. This is not accomplishable, and why not? Because of the human nature. Because, let's say, if a system is coming in power, you need a group of people to support you to implement that system. And for that group of power that you are relying on, you have to create a lot of privileges to keep them very satisfied, to support you in your ideas and implementing that system. And here is inequality created already right there, from the beginning. Now, in the United States, yes, I know the situation that it said that 1% of the population is having now a good portion of the GNP of this country. Well, what can I say? If we can find a system that give the people more without taking illegally from the people that are working hard and getting prosperous because they are working very hard and they are creative and they are making sacrifices, yes, I am in favor of giving, first of all, the capitalist state. I totally agree that it should take care of those that are not able to take care of themselves. And to create a system of support for these people. But despite all this concentration of accumulation of capital, to use Marx's term in the Das Kapital, his main book, even despite that, the people in this country with 1% being extremely rich and the other people being less favored, we're still living better than many, many, many other people in the world. If we are looking that people have 2, 3 TVs in their homes, if we are looking that they have all kinds of facilities in the kitchen that is improving the life of women especially. If I'm looking at the fact that almost every family has at least one car, mostly 2 cars, and many other things we can add to this, and look at the other countries in the world that are living, some of them with $2 per day, and some of these people, they do not have even to put a piece of bread on the table for their children. I would say that with all these imperfections, we are doing quite well here.
Okay, one more question about this, and this relates to John Rawls and his, what he calls the difference principle. So John Rawls taught at Harvard for a long time, and he has a book called A Theory of Justice. And when it comes right down to the end of the book, I think it's right to say that he believes, John Rawls believes, that all the primary resources of society and all the benefits of society ought to be distributed equally, unless an unequal distribution benefits those who will, in the new order, have the least. So his philosophy would be everybody's equal, but if we give some people a lot more and the person who's at the bottom has more than he or she would have had when things were distributed equally, that's morally justified, he said. Now, I think it's often criticized that this principle by John Rawls allows enormous benefits to the very top, provided they're justified by the smallest increase in the well-being of those at the bottom. And so my question, I guess, I'm trying to get to a question, it is this. Do you think that the difference principle that John Rawls describes should require some proportionate benefit between those who are at the bottom and those who are at the top when inequality is introduced? Or do you think that it's okay, as he says, for there to be huge benefits for the most wealthy, provided the least wealthy get just a tiny, to be an extreme? Suppose one person gets $10 billion, and then my income is increased by 1 penny. That does seem to many people that would justify John Rawls' position. Now, he may fight back on that, but that's what a lot of people think he thinks. And so I guess I wonder, what do you think?
I think his idea is utopia. I don't believe it's possible to have this equality in distribution of goods. First of all, this is against capitalist principle with laissez-faire economy. It's encouraging creativity and hard work and honesty. And I think somehow a redistribution is already made here. It's still inequality, of course, but redistribution, it's already made through these social things that are giving to the people, and a lot of perks that are giving to people. I believe in somehow this redistribution of wealth is made. Not equality, because I don't believe this can be accomplished.
Okay, but
Because, first of all, because the human nature, we don't have, our human nature doesn't let us to be equal with anybody else. I mean, always we like, look even at the children, small children. If you put two children with toys between them, one of them will try to grab everything else. And it's against the human nature.
okay, but I think Rawls says, I start off appearing very egalitarian. That's the bottom line, that's the default position. But the difference principle, which allows such great disparities, in fact justifies capitalism, or something like capitalism. So I think that's what he would argue. And then he would justify this by saying, this is the system we would choose if all of us were choosing systems without knowing anything particular about ourselves, gender, race, religion, philosophy.
Right.
So he says, well, if that were the case, we would all choose a baseline of equality, but then we would allow big increases in benefits for some, so long they benefited people at the bottom. Okay, now let me see if I can get other people in the discussion as well, okay?
Sure.
Who has the first comment? Ron Grable.
Well, two things. You seem to imply that we have these great disparities in wealth in the United States because some people are working harder, more creative. You even mentioned honesty of all things. Well then, did we not have this many hardworking, honest, creative people in the 1950s when the distribution of wealth was not nearly so disproportionate as it is now? These people are not enormously wealthy because of hard work. They're enormously wealthy because of, you know, the political decisions that they have been able to make that give them enormous advantages, unfair, unjust advantages. And honesty is the last thing that made them enormously wealthy. Now that's one point. The other point is, people say that Denmark is a socialist country, but that's not the country you use when you want to denigrate socialism. You use North Korea. Now, I'm a middle-class person. My life and the life of people like me and the economics and the opportunities of people like me under this so-called socialist system in Denmark is much better and much safer and much advantage. There's so many advantages economically and health-wise and education-wise under this so-called socialist system. So why do you use North Korea as an example of socialism instead of Denmark as an example of socialism? Now you can find things wrong with Denmark too, but people in my situation in Denmark are much better off than people in my situation here in the United States.
Okay,
So,
I'm sorry, Ron.
yeah.
Just for the benefit of everybody, the Grade will spend half the year in the United States and half the year in Denmark, so they're speaking out of some first-hand knowledge. Now, the first question was, do those who are most privileged in this country have that by way of their better conduct, more industrious lives, and so forth? That's one question. And then, why use the word socialism for North Korea and Denmark equally, or maybe not at all? And why take North Korea as the model of socialism rather than Denmark?
Okay. Well, I believe that this country was built on Calvinistic principles. And the Calvinists that came here in the United States, they brought that ethics of work that contributed to the prosperity of this country. Hard work, honesty was among these values. I will not deny the fact that some of the wealth that was accumulated by the great magnates in this country, maybe this wealth was not accumulated on fair means. Maybe some of them were cheating or stealing. That is very possible too. I will not deny that. I don't know exactly how Carnegie accumulated his wealth, and Morgan and Rockefeller and others. But I'm talking in general about the ethics which this country was built on, I believe.
So the ethics of the 1% are better than the ethics of the middle class in America? That's why they are so much wealthier?
No, I would say that I agree with, I just said that I agree with you that some of these people that accumulated wealth didn't accumulate it in a correct way.
So
I agree with you.
On that part, you're agreeing with it.
Right.
Let's talk
No.
about Denmark.
Let's talk about Denmark. The socialism that some people are taking as an example in the Nordic countries, Denmark, Sweden, especially Norway, it's a different type of socialism. First of all, there is a tradition, a Protestant tradition in this country of hundreds of years that was inculcated in the spirit of these people. There are not far away, the shops, and you should be aware of this better than me. There are shops in isolated places in Denmark, in Norway, in Sweden, where they were filled up with all kinds of products. There was nobody taking care of the shop, and you, if you're climbing on the mountain or you're on an isolated place and you have that shop there, you went and pick up whatever you need and left the money there and left. It was such honesty in these countries. And this, I believe, is because of the spirit of the Protestant Reformation that was inculcated in these people. And is still in existence today. Though, with the influx of these people with a different kind of ethic, the things are starting to change. The second thing that I want to mention is the fact that I would not like to live in that socialist system because I have to pay 50 or 60% of my income to the government. And I don't want the government to lead my life, to tell me what to do. I like to be independent.
So that you can pay your whole life savings for your retirement.
Why should we
get other people involved.
Sorry.
Why should we have?
I'm sorry.
No, that's, I think Ron is raising good questions,
Yes,
and I
but-
think you've responded to them very well. Let's see, I gather from what you've said, you would not want the United States to become more like Denmark. That would not be an ideal. So I think that's right.
And the government to control my life.
Yeah, to that degree.
You're right.
Okay, Dr. Carlson.
I can't say a whole lot about Denmark. I would point out two things. One of the reasons that Denmark and countries like that can be so generous with both redistribution and benefits to the society at large has to do with the fact that they basically, we have their back. In World War II, there was a very effective collaborationist government in Denmark. They of course are right next door to Germany, so it was, and Germany basically took over. But there was also a lot of collaboration, a lot of cooperation with the Nazis, possibly partly out of self-preservation. But that is a sort of a different issue. I think we are collapsing to
distinct periods of history and trying to judge one by the other. So to say that, see, most of us don't care what the 1% has as long as we are comfortable. And I think that is true for most of the country. You can't determine ultimate happiness by how many things you have. So as long as there is a level of adequate and comfortable and appreciated economic well-being of most of the people, you know, I don't care how many airplanes Rockefeller had or Trump has or the Koch brothers or George Soros or any of them, or you know, they can go up there and do what they want. Because I have one television and I'm perfectly happy with that, you know, and that is in fact what I have. But I can live comfortably. I don't have to envy and be so, can I say, so aggressive in attempts to take away from people in order to make myself.
May I just add quickly, Ron, because you single Denmark. In fairness, you have to recognize that Denmark is starting having serious problems because it's not able to cover the social programs that was able so far to cover. You know that.
I know, but it's not anywhere near as bad as it is here.
Okay, let's see. Let's come right around the circle. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Way in the back.
You know, I grew up in a middle-class family. I mean, and my parents, they didn't go to college, but they probably have more than we do. And part of it is they worked hard, but they didn't buy the most expensive. I mean, if we bought clothes, it wasn't the designer, it was the middle. It wasn't the worst, it wasn't the middle. It was a bicycle. I mean, and even my grandmother, who's 99, she still lives in the same house she's lived in for 60 years. It's not needing a big bathroom and a bedroom. And that's like my kids' generation. It's like you have to have a TV in every bedroom. And part of that is what we've lost in our middle class, is we think we need to have the $100 pair of jeans and, you know, and it's not like my mother, who they have a lot of money, and my grandmother, but my mother still goes to Kmart to shop, and there's no way she's spending $100 for a pair of tennis. It's a different mentality, and because we wanted, you know, my parents wanted to give me, of my generation, better than they, because they grew up probably with the food stamps from the Depression, from my grandmother's days, and we want to give back to our kids, but sometimes we've given too much. I mean, my kids going to school, they have a runny nose and we don't want them to go to school today. And so that we've raised a generation that doesn't know how to. And on the societies where, you know, tuition is free, if these kids can't pass a test, we have the chance that if you didn't do well in high school and you still want to go be a doctor, if you work hard and you only take a half a unit or half the load of everybody, you have that chance to do it. Where Germany and some of these, you have an entrance test, and if you can't pass that test, you can't be a lawyer, you can't be a doctor, you can only do what you can pass your test.
Okay, now I'm going to ask myself and Peter to restrain ourselves so we can get as many people from the audience to speak. I'm coming around this way. Yes?
The Calvinist principles that you say this country is imputing, does it include using slave as wealth maximization? And also, I don't know of one black person who has ever received 40 acres and a mule.
I'm sorry, you don't know of any black person
who has ever received 40 acres and a mule.
Really? That was promised, correct? But it never was delivered? Is that correct? Okay. Well, thank you. All right, let's keep coming. Thank you, Peter, for yes.
Well, I was going to make the same comment. The country was really built on slavery. That's really where we got our start. That's where the banking system was established. It was in the chattel mortgages that were slaves were considered property. So really the big beginning in the South in the cotton market slavery, as I understand, from what the library on it, that was one of the beginnings. The second thing, too, is equity and fairness. To me, there's a difference. Fairness is it fair if people are going $100,000 in debt to get an education where there are no jobs available, and they have that hanging over their head the rest of their life with no chance of bankruptcy or ever getting rid of it, but being held in slavery to that kind? To me, that's not fair. That doesn't have anything to do with equity, that's fairness. And then the other thing is, I think both socialism, capitalism, communism is built on a false premise. It's built on infinite growth on a finite planet, and it is impossible. I read recently, anyone who says that you can have infinite growth on a finite planet is either mad or an economist. And, and so economists today say resources have nothing to do. It's all labor, capital, and technology. That'll take care. Resources don't count. It's a survival. Whereas everything is based on resources. And we see a tremendous depletion in all of the essential resources, primarily energy. I know people spoof that, but it's a fact. We're running out of the most crucial energy that runs capitalistic or socialistic economy. That's crude oil. And we don't have 100 years of it, as people say. It may be in the ground, but it's not extractable at a profitable point. And so that's where we're heading now, limits to growth. And that's what Daniel Meadows, back in the 70s, at MIT, projected would happen. And that's exactly, as I see it, is what's happening. So I think all of those ideologies are doomed to failure. And that's where we as a church, I think, ought to be addressing the reality as we look to the future. We ought to be addressing these issues.
And what is the system that you agree with?
Well, it's a degrowth system, and it's probably unsolvable. As somebody said, that there has been a problem and a predicament. A problem has a solution. Predicaments have outcomes. I think this is a predicament, has outcomes, and it's not going to be good.
Okay, Pete, thank you very much, Roger. I'm going
That's
to ask
the way
you.
we're looking for the kingdom of God.
And that's exactly right. And that's the only solution, Peter. I agree with you.
Oh, okay, now what I'm going to do, Peter, is give you the last minutes, not word, but minutes, so that you can sum up as you see fit. But meanwhile, I'd like to get as many different people from the audience to comment, okay? Let's see, I think Forrest was next, and then back here to Barry Taylor. Dr. Taylor.
Peter, thank you very much for sharing. Because I don't think any of us ever been punished because we kept the Sabbath, essentially. So we have a hard time grasping some of that. So we do come from different worlds, and I do disagree with you, but I want to say I respect you and admire you. But I have troubles with things like you mentioned that Germany became the #1 economic power.
In Europe. In Europe.
Well, yeah, right. But that was because of the Marshall Plan. That was socialism. I mean, that was a major gift to the Germans. So they didn't just do it because of course.
And the German work.
Well, but anyways, I don't believe hard work is why the 1% have their wealth. Most Nobel Prize economists believe that the inequality in the United States has been contrived because of the tax system that we have since the 80s. But, John Locke influenced the early generations. And part of John Locke's philosophy was people come together in community for the betterment of all. And he included several things in it. Among those are health. It just seems like sometimes we've gotten away from this idea of what's good for the overall society, which is what's good for me. And I just...
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I want to wrap it up with that, but that's why I'm just saying is we've moved away from these concepts of the Commonwealth. And I've got mine, doggone it. I'm going to do with it darn well.
Okay, Peter's going to have the last words, but let's, is that Dr. Taylor back there? Okay.
I think one of the things that we need to recognise is there's no one system that's going to turn out to be the best. And I think it's helpful to ask citizens from various types of economies how satisfied they are with what their government is doing. I've lived in New Zealand which is sometimes seen as more socialist than Australia or America. I've travelled in Norway and colleagues from other parts of Scandinavia. I am just astounded at how happy the people in Norway are to pay their 50% taxes. They feel that the government is taking very good care of them, and they don't want to see it change. So I think when we think about which is the best way, we just need to realise there's more than one way of achieving the goal.
Okay, and I think that's very important, because it may be that we don't want an ideology that fits every context, but one that can be used, tailored to fit particular settings. I think that's a good point. One last comment, and then we'll hear from Peter.
Talking about Nordic countries again, when it comes to innovation, nobody beats the US. Yes, you have all these wonderful things in Nordic countries, but not a whole lot comes out of there when it comes, from Google to technology to robotics. Why is that? I mean, why is this country so special that we are so good in innovation? Out of chaos, we're able to create things that other countries that are very well stable socially can't produce.
Okay, Peter, from here on out, for the next 3 minutes, it's all yours. Go for it.
Well, I don't have too many things to say in 3 minutes,
Oh,
but
four.
I would say that from my own experience, I am in favor of a society that values the individual and that respects human rights and that respects the God-given rights of the individual. And I love this country because if we're looking at the Declaration of Independence, it's mentioning 4 times God in the Declaration of Independence. And they were talking here about if America is a Christian nation. And I strongly say, yes, it is. It's a Christian nation. It's a nation which was founded on the principles of the Bible. And looking at all the signatures of those signatories of the Declaration of Independence, they were people religiously educated. They were going to church. They were upholding Christian principles. And looking at the pilgrims that came here, and putting all this together, I will say, yes, America, it's a Christian-founded nation. And I believe that those that want to deny these things, they are just adopting an ostrich behavior because it's there. Looking at it, looking at all these great documents that the founding fathers were coming up with, looking at the first pilgrims that came for religious reasons here in this country, America, yes, it's a country that was based on the Bible. I am totally against a statist economy, politically controlled, from political point of view, state control or economy control. I lived under this for 40 years. I live in terror every day. I was not able to talk with my wife if I have to say something against the government, even in my apartment, because I didn't know who is my next neighbor, if he's not going to denounce me to the police. And I have to go on a park to talk with her to be sure that nobody will listen if I have something to communicate. I want to warn you against a state control of our lives. And I believe God is supporting not collectivist societies, but individuality. In the end, He's going to reward us individually. He's not going to say, what role did you play in your collectivist society, in your group? He's going to hold us responsible for what individually we did. And He's going to reward us accordingly individually.
Okay, perfect timing. Thank you. Let's thank Peter. Our thanks to you, but also our thanks to your wife, who is over there suffering through this. Thank you for being so patient. It's hard to be the wife of someone who's up front, because one never knows what that person's going to say next. So, thank you very, very much. Next week, Donna Carlson Reeves is taking up some cases of church and state and related matters, and let's hear from what it will be, Donna.
I forgot.
Okay, you forgot that you're doing it next week?
I did forget that I was doing it.
Okay, but she
I
will
don't know.
remember between now and then.
I'm not sure I'm going to be here next week. I will know that tomorrow, but we need to talk.
Okay, you know, several of us always have something to do if something falls through. So everybody come prepared. Hopefully Donna will be here. If she can't be, we will reschedule her. Okay? Don't run away just because of that. Okay, so we are not quite sure for next week. But after that, it's Graham Stacy for, I think, 2, maybe 3 weeks on some issues of the religion and the Bible and contemporary life. Is there anything else? Yes, we have a sign-up sheet. If you want to be on the email list, you can sign that. Okay, let's look at this. This is by the best educated guesses, no younger than 524 BC. And it's probably older than that. It's about 500 years before the time of Jesus that these words were put together, not when they were written or spoken, but when they were put together. And think of that, when we read these words, we're aligning ourselves with a tradition that goes back for 2,500, 3,000 years. If you've done nothing this morning, if you do nothing this morning but read this, your time has been well spent. Okay. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.